All right, we are live for another episode of Real Estate Junkies podcast. Today we have Daniella Stonefield. She is the co-founder and president of Elevé Properties, part of the top-ranked Coast Professional Group, and with EXP Realty, of course. And Daniella has a wealth of experience in luxury real estate and community involvement and defining your unique value proposition as a business owner. And we will also talk to her about her just do it mentality that has driven her success. So if you are a real estate agent looking to break into luxury market or build your brand and making a difference in your community, you do not want to miss this interview. So tune in with us, and Daniella will share how she built a luxury real estate business and how you can too. Daniella, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. Welcome.
It is my pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
For sure. So let's get right into it, right? So why real estate? What was the first thing that inspired you to get into this business, and how did you begin your journey?
So, why real estate could take up the entirety of this podcast. I promise I won't do that. But actually, so the book that I wrote that's in the publication process right now talks a lot about that, because people have so many different reasons for getting into real estate, right? And frankly, they're not all good ones. And so, when I got into real estate, I like to think that I had one good one and one not so good one, because for each of us, when we get into this business, unless you are a legacy in somehow in this world, in this industry, you really don't know what you don't know, right? And
Yeah.
that's not unique to real estate, but it does seem to be a pervasive thing, for all of us. And so for me, I got into real estate actually by way of architecture. So I was actually looking very seriously at attending SCAD, which is the Savannah College of Art and Design, which is a very, very high ranked
Oh, wow.
art school. Yes. And their architecture program is incredible. And I live, that's part of my market. And so this was, probably 11 or 12 years ago now. And I was looking at their program. And the more that I did that, at the time, I was also going through the process of a home purchase. And this is where the not so good reason comes in. So I sort of backed into real estate as a way to really not only pay for architecture school, but also to learn what the consumer was looking for, and to understand, what are they building around here, and what's in demand. And so that's the one that I would say is maybe the better reason. And the not so good reason was that I myself, as I said, was going through a purchase, and it was a less than stellar experience. And as
Wow.
with so many of us that get into the business, a lot of times we think, well, we had a really terrible experience. I can do this better. I'm going to get into the business of real estate, right? And you don't do that when you go to the doctor. You don't have somebody that gives you a botch job and you're like, you know what, I'm going to medical school. It just doesn't happen that way, right? But of course, that the world, the journey to get into real estate is a little bit different than going through medical school. So, so that's what I did, and I never ended up actually going to architecture school. It turns out I'm quite good at this, and
Oh,
I love
wow.
it. And so I stayed here, and that's where I've been ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're not the first person actually in our podcast that said that they had bad experience with their agent, or the experience of buying their or selling their property, and they realized that they could do it better, and because they had to do a lot more research on their own, and they realized, oh, I think I should try it, and they tried it, and they've been in business ever since. So it's
Right.
interesting that you repeated that.
Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing, and it kind of tells us that competition sucks, right? There is no competition in real estate if you're doing the right thing. So what were some of the biggest challenges or some of the fears you have faced when you started in the industry, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I've gone through a number of, personal and professional iterations over the course of my time in this business. And I would say that right out of the gate, one of the biggest challenges for me was at the time. So I'm in a southern market. And even though we have a lot of transplants here, my market is what I call the 1 hour triangle. So it's essentially historic Beaufort, which is south of Charleston, down to Savannah, Georgia, and Hilton Head Island.
Mm.
And of course, Bluffton is in the middle there. And so it sounds like a lot, but it's actually only about an hour between each of those. And so
Wow.
that's our area. And I say that because there is still a very dedicated sort of, old family Southern element here, which is beautiful. It's one of the things that makes this area so timeless and wonderful, but it also makes it very hard to break in, not only as a newbie, But as a young woman in a world that at the time was
Because they're
dominated,
traditional, right? They have,
yes,
yeah,
yeah,
they
the low
value
country real
relationships
estate,
and connections. Yeah.
exactly. The low country real estate uniform was khakis and a navy blazer. And so, and largely still is. I find it endearing now, but I say that to say I was not within the mold of that, right? And not only that,
The,
but I did not have a history in real estate. I had just moved here. I had no legacy here. And so I had all of these things that
wow.
what I was working to do was take what seemed like barriers
Hmm.
and try and put them on a pedestal as a differentiator so that I would stand out faster. And I was able to succeed in that.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Doesn't Eminem says that, like, oh, you can't make fun of me because whatever you make fun of me for is what I use to differentiate myself. Something like that. I don't know. He said something like that where,
Yeah.
and he does that in his raps, right? Where he would
Hmm.
say stuff that people say about him behind his back. He just say it out in the public, and that makes him different. So it's interesting. So how did you, I guess, like, leap from your general real estate, your everyday buying, selling, investing type of realtor to
Hmm.
into the luxury residential properties, and what steps you would say is crucial in transitioning into that?
Well, I would say here a couple of things. It's a good question. It's a big question, right? And
Yeah.
for me, my journey actually, I knew I wanted to be in the luxury space. I mean, of course, the numbers are higher. There's more zeros. That's all true. But everything in the luxury space scales up. And I know not everybody agrees with me on this, but I'm telling you in my experience, this is the case. And that we're talking about level of service, we're talking about knowledge, expertise, all of these things, you need to be on point. And that should be true across the board. But I think that the echelon is just a little bit higher in
Yeah.
the higher dollar spaces. But also that allowed me to play and work in the world that I was comfortable in, that I loved, that I was passionate about. Things like materials, light dynamics, site selection, all those things that come from that love of architecture. And I
Yeah.
speak the language. And so that was a natural fit for me. I wouldn't
Mm.
necessarily say that everybody should just launch right into the luxury world the way that I did, because you need to make sure that you have the knowledge to back it up, and you can get it, but you want to take the right steps so that you can succeed and
Yeah.
and really satisfy what the needs of the clients are, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters.
No, that's pretty good. Yeah. And I think a lot of agents out there, they want to do the same, but they feel, intimidated by it,
Mhm.
right? Like having to know more, having to give a better level service, right? And building relationship with more, I guess, higher quality, more educated people, right? So
Mhm.
how'd you develop the confidence and skills to, getting, first of all, figuring out getting in this business and becoming successful, but also, breaking in that high end market?
Yeah, so you mentioned this sort of just do it mindset, and
Yeah.
Nike, don't send me a cease and desist. I'm not trademarking it or anything, but it's such a great motto, right? It's such a
Mm.
great thing to live your life by, because if you can get all of that noise out of your head, and I'm certainly not saying that I'm perfect at it. I live in my head most of the time, but if you're able to do that, and if you're able to realize what really matters and sort of shed away all of the rest, and as it
Mm.
says, just do it, you
Yeah.
know, that breeds confidence. Because where does confidence come from? I mean, there is the
Experience.
saying of fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
That's not, I don't believe that real estate's the place to do that. I don't think we should practice on our clients. I don't, that's not my position. But I do think that you can skip the line by learning from someone who is willing to share with you and teach potentially somebody that's looking to get out of the business in
Mm.
5 or 7 years. Maybe you could be part of a
Yeah.
succession plan.
Yeah.
There are methodical ways to do this, that you can learn what you really need to know so that you don't have to fake it. Because
Yeah.
confidence, as you said, it comes from experience. And,
Yeah.
how do you get the confidence if you don't have the experience? And how do you get the experience if you don't have the confidence? I mean, that's the difficult slope that you have to try and
Yeah.
tread there. So
Yeah.
you do need to go in with at least an initial idea of, I believe that I can do this. Because
Mm.
if you don't, I promise you, the high-end client will sniff you out in half of a second, because
Oh, yeah.
they, more than anyone, are business savvy, because that's how they got to
They've
where
been
they are.
around, right? That's how they got
Exactly.
there.
Yes. So you don't have to drive the nicest car. You don't have to be a member of the yacht club necessarily. It's not like it hurts, but you don't have to do that. But what you need is a basic level of acumen. And you have to be able
Mm.
to show that if you don't know what they need you to know, you will learn it and you have the capacity to do so, and you will be ultra professional through that process. That goes a very long way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you talk about being involved in your community
Mm-hmm.
that helped your business, right? Build your business.
Yes.
What advice would you give someone that's looking to build a relationship based business, or more, I guess, like grassroots type of community based business?
Yes. So, we talk a lot about authenticity and transparency and being able to be yourself in this business. And I think it's particularly important in real estate, because real estate is not only a person to person business, but we are just like what we're doing today, right? I mean, not every industry makes itself so clearly in need of things like this, sort of public FaceTime that we get in this industry. And so
Yeah.
you have to be able to be yourself, because if you can't, you will burn out. I promise
Yeah.
you.
Mm.
You may have a longer runway than some people, but you will eventually burn out if you cannot be authentic to yourself. And so you need to be able to develop that and figure out what those things are that you are truly passionate about, and then you can parlay those things into
Yeah.
community involvement. Let's say that you are passionate, like we are, for example, about education and literacy. That is something that is extremely dear to my heart. I believe that it's critical and it underpins the success of any community. So that's something that we get heavily
Mm.
involved in. And that does not exhaust me, because I am truly passionate about that. So find
Yeah.
something that you're passionate about. And I would say this too: start small.
Mm.
Don't look across the board and say, okay, I'm going to do these 10 things, because again, you are at high risk of burnout. Pick
Yeah.
one and just really dig into it. Go an inch wide and a mile deep, and maximize those relationships, and then add. Because a lot of times too, if you've filled your calendar right from the get-go, when an opportunity comes, you don't have the capacity for it. You have to allow yourself to have that capacity. So
Mm.
I would say start small, pick something that truly lights your fire, and go from there. It sounds simple because it is simple, but I'm telling you, just don't spread yourself too thin.
I love the fact that you prefaced it by saying that you got to be authentic, right? You can't
Yes.
have a community based business and going out there trying to be relevant to the community by faking it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not really real, if that's not who you are, you will burn out, because you will always have to put out this perception that you care. And
Yes.
in reality, you don't, right? So I love the
Right.
fact that you prefaced it like, hey, you want to do that? Just make sure you're showing up real, because that's the cover you would have to put on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not the cover you're wearing at night, you're gonna have to keep taking it off, taking it on, taking it off, taking it on,
So true.
which is amazing. Now, how'd you go about, let's talk about unique value proposition, separating
Sure.
yourself from the crowd, right? Defining your unique value proposition, and how important do you feel it is in competitive markets like we are right now, in, like, having a saturation of agents?
Yes. So I would say, your unique value proposition, we hear this term all the time and it sort of fades into the background, right? And you hear about, how do you differentiate? How do you differentiate? Well, really the way that we have defined ours in our little boutique group here is, different is not always enough. You can be different and it's not necessarily effective. And
Mm,
so you need to figure out, how are you different and why does it matter?
mm,
And not why does it matter to you necessarily as the
yeah,
practitioner, although that's important too, but why does it matter to your client or your potential client or the marketplace? What is it that you bring to the table, or what could you develop that you can bring to the table that is different in a meaningful way? So
yeah,
different on its own isn't enough. And that's something that I would say to a lot of people, because they talk about, how do I differentiate? How do I stand out? Well, it's great to stand out, but if you're not standing out for anything that actually speaks to your consumer, it's not going to mean anything. It's not going to bring you any sort of value to your business, and you won't connect with the people that you're looking to connect with. So for us, it was really a matter of backing into it, again, going back to that authenticity and, what really fires us up, because we live and breathe our business.
yeah,
And when you do that, it has to be real, because if it's not, again, you will just right, it can't work. And we're
yeah,
energetic beings, we are emotional beings, and it's the way that we're built. And
yeah,
so let me put it this way: it's not that you can't, but if you are able to find ways to integrate that into an authentic, full spectrum, self, and
mm,
then you can bring your business in as part of that, your life will be so much richer. And so finding ways to do that, and really backing into, all the way from, I talk a lot about things like, brand voice, color scheme, typography. I mean, all the sort of basics.
yeah,
All of that has to work together to create a cohesive whole. But
yeah,
those things come from my personality, my husband's person, and my husband is my partner. We didn't talk about that, but he and I run our business together. And so
Yeah.
that's where all of that comes from. And so we can live and breathe that because it is of us.
Hmm. Now, that's so interesting you say that, and that's very, very sophisticated way of what I say. To me, it's simple, right? It's like you want to build a brand that is separated from others. Get
Yes,
obsessed with who is it you want to target to that brand, right? Know what's relevant to them, and your unique value proposition should be directly relevant to who do you serve,
mm-hmm.
what results you get them, and how do you get them the result, right? If you could
Precisely.
just deliver that message consistently and effectively and efficiently across the board, honestly, in my opinion, aesthetics even become irrelevant, right?
Sure.
Where your ideal clients are aware that that's who you serve, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're aware what results you get them, and it's not results that you think is relevant to them. It's the results that they just lost the last night's sleepover, right? Like you gotta be so obsessed with them that you know what problems they're facing and what
Yes,
solutions they need. So when you deliver that message consistently, efficiently, and effectively across the board, you can't not be relevant, right? It's impossible to not be relevant to that ideal client, right? But anyway,
exactly.
those I find that interesting. Like the way you put it is definitely a gap, I guess, in the understanding of agents. And I was just on a call right before this, right? And I was having that conversation with agent, like you're chasing, like he's trying to buy leads and he's struggling, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to create a hole in your boat that you haven't even shipped, right? Like you haven't even started. You're trying to create a hole in your boat.
Yes.
And to him, it was like, oh my God, this seems so much, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
creating a brand and making yourself stand apart and build relationship with people and all of that, right? And you mentioned the just do it mentality. Could you give us maybe an example or two of when you had to kind of just go out there and just do it and be able to overcome some of the hurdles that comes with not just doing it?
Sure. I mean, gosh, I I have a repository. I have a just as sort of a backstory. I have a young sister who I'm the eldest of four. I have a young sister who was a surprise. She was born when I was 17. So I have been able to offer her a lot of, sisterly knowledge and insight over the years. And one of the things that I said to her that when you just asked me came to mind was, I have failed more than you have succeeded. So you can learn from that,
I'm gonna use that on my clients from now
and it's not her fault. She's young, right? But it's one of those things, it's another way to say, don't be afraid of failure, because you
on.
are going to fail. If you are trying, if you are testing things, if you are iterating, if you are, throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks, what you're going to do in the beginning, right? And to some degree forever. If you're
Yeah.
doing that, it's not all going to work. And that's
Mm.
okay. So you want to, in my opinion, I think of this all the time, you want to fail fast and fail forward. Those are the only
Yeah.
things that matter. If you're going to do it, you have to be able to pick yourself back up, and you have to have the skin to be able to do that, that thick skin, which you develop over time. Again, it's not that I have no sensitivity. That's beyond not true. But I have to be able to see past that and push past that. And that's
Yeah.
sort of that, that just doing it, that, okay, this feels horribly sucky right now and I hate it, but I've got to get through this, because if I don't, it's not going to happen.
Mm.
And
So it's
so,
not just ignoring your feelings and just
no,
getting to doing it. You accepting the fact that, hey, the reason why I can't let my feelings get in the way is because what I'm trying to get to is more important.
exactly. And really embracing it. I mean, I've come to this place where it feels like the next level of power where fear is concerned. And I feel like when I feel that feeling, that feeling that I identify as fear, that anxiety, that uncertainty, because fear comes from
Mm.
uncertainty in most cases.
Yeah.
When I feel that, I know I'm in the right direction, because it means I don't know something.
Yeah.
And so that to me is an opportunity to learn. And so the more I can feel that, the more I know that my true north is working and my compass is pointed in the right direction. And so that to me is now something I actually actively seek, is that sensation.
So what are some of the most important lessons you have learned as you build your brand right now with Elevé Properties and what you guys are doing taking it to the next level. I know we were having a conversation at the Build conference,
Mhm.
and like, what were some of the most important lessons you would say you would take out of where you got to your business right now?
So actually, one of them, I suppose, comes from our motto. So our brand is Elevé Properties, and it comes from our motto, which is elevate everything.
Mm,
And that's really the lesson that not only has fallen out of the way that we operate with our
mm,
clients, because everything is client centered all the time. And you may have heard me say in my talk, if you focus on the client and you do what's right for the client every single time, there are very, very few conundrums left over. And
mm,
so if you just keep that as your North Star. So for us, it's the elevation of everything. It could be big, it could be small, it could be an entire system and process, or it could be the way that we hand somebody a cup of coffee. It could be anything, but everything can be better. Everything can be smoother, more beautiful, elevated in some way. So if you just
mm.
keep that in mind, for us, that's our driving core factor.
Yeah. Wow. And your husband, you are building this company with your husband. How do you balance between business and personal life? Like, I think a lot of people crave that, and a lot of people
Mhm.
don't know what it comes with until they do that, like, start trying to build a business with their partner. So what has been the key making of this partnership work? Like, what are some of the keys?
Well, it's so interesting because, in real estate, first of all, this is a business that can follow you home, as we all know,
Oh
on
yeah.
this podcast. And it will. It's a very sticky little shadow, this business. And so that's just if it's you. But when it's you and your partner or you and your spouse, it's
Yeah.
almost
It
impossible,
followed me
right?
home so often that I decided to just stay home. Like, here, let's.
Exactly, exactly. And so, but if you aren't coming together at the dinner table and saying, "Oh, honey, tell me about your day. What did you do? This and that." Well, I already know what you did because you're my partner and we stare at each other 24 hours a day, right? I mean, that's the reality. That is our life. But we chose that. And actually, he and I started as business partners, so we did it the other way around.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we actually got together and married later. But I
Interesting.
say, yeah, so I say that to say it would not work for everyone. I don't think it would work for most
Mm,
people.
yeah.
It doesn't always work for us, but most of the time, the
You
scales
gotta
are
have
balanced.
very hard boundaries. So I want to know
Yes,
about this. Yeah.
the scales are balanced in the right direction for us. So for us, it's we both love what we do, and I think it's very different for everybody. I would also say, and this is again sort of something that is my own opinion on the subject, but I don't believe in the idea of attempting to create a balance,
Mm,
because I think that indicates a struggle. And I would say that life is just life. It's not work and life, it's just
yeah.
life. And your work, like your play, like your eating, your sleeping, it's all part of life. And so when you see them as inherently opposed, it
Yeah.
creates this diversion or this
Friction.
this
Yeah.
division. Yes.
Yeah.
And so for us, when we kind of threw that out, yes, we like to have personal time. Yes, we like to get away, but we just needed to identify what are the things that matter most to us on a personal level. And we need to make sure that we build that in. And then
Mm,
we just let the rest, happen naturally as it needs to. And that won't work for everybody, but that's the, if you want to use the word balance, that's the one that we have found. But I think
yeah.
it is going to be different for everyone. And of course, we don't have children. So that's a huge gap that I know that a lot of people watching are going to say, well, you don't have any kids. Well, you're right.
Yeah.
And so my balance
Yeah.
is not going to look the same as your balance, but you have
Yeah.
to find what's right for you. And you can't let an outside force tell you what you're supposed to be accomplishing.
Wow. That's so profound. I'd say this to people all the time, and agents in my academy will be like, "Oh, here, there you go again. He's talking about that balance." Is that if you take this as a lifestyle, there is no balance needed, right? Like,
Mhm.
if you have a separation between life and business, they will always get into each other's path, right? Because you're looking at it differently. But when it becomes a lifestyle, then there is like a gray line that you can hardly separate, right,
Mhm.
between your life and your business.
Yes.
And I think what you mentioned is very, very profound when you said, what those things are, the things that are important to you, you give those things a priority, and then everything else just naturally falls in its place. Something that I talk about with agents all the time is that, hey, you gotta build a business around life and not live around your business. When you live around your business, like, oh, I got to run this errand, I'll do it between this appointment and that appointment, and I got a prospect, I will do it between waking up and my next thing that is important to me, taking my kids to school, right? you're
Hmm.
living around your business. So when life does have a priority, it gets in the way of business, right? But when you have built a business around life, which is giving life the things that are important to you priority, and then let everything else fall in its place that need
Hmm.
to be in place, it never gets in the way, right? So I love that profound advice there. Now let's talk about EXP, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you're running your business now at EXP, and
Mhm.
how did you get here, and how do you see EXP as, I guess, like what impact did EXP make to this business? And so of course your brand is different than your average agents out there.
Hmm. Yeah, so our interest in this company really started with a couple of things. So possibly as many people watching, we were approached over the years by various EXP agents, and it's not that I wasn't willing to speak with them. That's never going to be the case. I believe that you respect everyone who comes to you. But I would also say that at the time, my mind wasn't open to
Mm.
what the offering was. And it seemed to me like it was in its infancy, because in fact it was, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We just weren't open to that opportunity at that time.
Yeah.
It wasn't right for us. So over the years, what ended up happening was that Coast, Rick and Tristan and our whole crew that's here now, they created something that was a little bit more cohesive, that in some ways follows more of the traditional model. Like, for example, we have beautiful offices that are our offices, and EXP being a cloud-based model, that's not for everybody, but for us, it was very important because of the way that we operate. We do a lot of FaceTime. We do a lot of events for clients. It's very
Mm.
important that we have a place for our clients to come to and enjoy a cocktail hour, or, those kinds of things. And so that mattered to us. And so when they put that into place, it really got us interested in, okay, we're willing to talk to you now, kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
and so after quite some time and all the conversations about, the EXP model, and really understanding it, what I came to learn, because my interest is, I wanted to operate as a brokerage without being a broker. I have no interest in the
Mhm.
liability of being a broker, none at all. And so between those two things and the model that Coast was operating on, that really created the perfect runway for us to say yes to the opportunity, which we did in January.
Wow. Wow. And what difference have you seen before and after? Has there been any differentiative factor where, like, wow, I didn't see this before I came here? Like,
So yeah, yes and no. And I say that only to be transparent with the viewers, because for us, the onboarding process was very rocky. And it's I would love to see it, maybe a little bit more streamlined. I understand that there are people that have beautiful, very smooth onboarding processes. That was not
yeah,
our experience. And so it was one of those moments where I was thinking, oh God, did we do the right thing? Like, if it's like this now, what's it going to be like? But I am so
it is
glad that
tough. The first 30 days is tough.
it
And
was tough. It was tough. It was actually more than 30 for us. But anyway,
okay.
but I just say that to say,
No,
for
this
anybody
is
that's
this is
watching,
actually a factor that we saw for agents in our community, is that we have built out an onboarding process
yes.
that is EXP onboarding process, but simplified for.
Exactly. And in our group, we are doing the exact same thing for this reason, to, because again, we've encountered this obstacle. So how are we going to solve for it? Exactly as you said. And
Mm.
so that was the first thing in it. And so it set us back a little bit, because we were focusing
Yeah.
a lot of just, on the administrative stuff. And thank goodness that we have an incredible assistant. If we didn't, I don't know where we'd be, but we do. And she's incredible. Thank you, Bana. And so we kind of got into it. But I will say this: the yes part comes from, there is an immediate sense of community in this company.
Mm.
And I really love that, because Rick and I are extremely community oriented, as we've talked about. And the ability to really dig into a group of people who want to better their lives, better the lives of those around them, create
Mm.
an elevated opportunity for the people that are in their sphere, and increase that sphere. To me,
Yeah.
that is a winning model. And so, and frankly, just sort of the nuts and bolts of it, the way that EXP as a company has figured out how to monetize a system that is going to happen anyway. Other
Yeah.
companies have tried to do this. The revenue share model, the way that EXP does it is unique, but the idea had happened before. It just
Yeah.
was never, it was never in this way. And so,
Mm.
being able to really dig into what it means to be part of this company, and understanding that all these things are tools that lay dormant unless and
Yeah.
until you maximize them, it's just like anything. And so we've really said we are committed to the company. We are committed to optimizing everything that's available to us, and we're going to see what happens. And already, Build was extraordinarily successful, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in Miami in October.
Oh,
And
you are coming out. Yes.
yes, of course, I wouldn't miss that.
Love it.
Yes.
No, I
So all
think,
of those things, those are the big yes. And I suspect we will continue to see that snowball build as we continue our time here.
yeah, I think I forgot the terminologies, but there's this thing that there's three levels of business. You transact, the basically last level, highest level is transform, right? So
Yes.
basically, people, EXP created the platform for people to financially align each other, right? So first, people collaborated based on benefiting from each other financially, right?
Yes.
And then we're going through a process where people are realizing that this benefit is more than financial, right? There is, for example, me and you have no connection between each other.
Hmm.
There is no upline downline. We're kind of
Right.
like on a sideline. I don't know where, right? I honestly don't even know your upline. But now we are realizing within the ecosystem that, hey, even if we are not financially aligned with each other, when we collaborate, it is going to benefit you, benefit me, benefit both of us together, right? But then
Yes.
the last form that we would get to, and I'm excited to see this evolution happen in this ecosystem, is that only way to do it is collaborate, right?
Hmm.
Where everyone transforms their thinking because they will see collaboration happen everywhere, regardless if there is a financial alignment or not, right? And people will start seeing the benefits of that, right? You hear the stuff like silos, real brokerage uses like, oh, EXP has silos where people are all grouped in this cult or whatever upline they have. Like, we have broke apart from that, and we're coming out, and now people are collaborating across the board, and eventually we have a company. If we maintain this course, is that only way to do it is collaboration,
Hmm.
regardless of who you are. I mean, I do it already. Like, I have real brokerage agents on my podcast, LPT agents on my podcast, right? Like, I don't care. Like, to me, it's like, hey, only way to do it is collaboration. So
Hmm.
I love your take on and transparency too on EXP, and I'm very transparent too. And sometimes I get in trouble for that, like saying too much or to giving too much information. Now let's ask you a very interesting. To me, it's interesting, this conversation, because every time I bring it up, like, things get heated. Is like, what do you what do you define as luxury real estate,
Hmm.
and who do you think is qualified to get into luxury?
Okay. Well, the way you ask it, I can see why it can get a little heated, right? So, but I will answer the question as best I can, coming from a place of experience in this space. And so the first is, how do I define luxury real estate? And luxury as a concept, I think there tends to be an association with higher dollar figures. That's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the defining characteristic. I think that
Mm,
luxury comes from a place of freedom of choice,
yeah.
freedom of time, which, of course, a lot of those things happen when you have become financially successful. That's the way our world is designed.
Yeah.
And so, because of that, the homes that are designed to influence that life, to me, are luxury homes.
Mm.
So they're the homes that give you what you want. They make you happy. They make you, emotionally, they just make you sing. That's a luxury home because it
Fulfilled. Yeah.
affords you that
Fulfilled.
luxury.
Right.
Exactly. Fulfilled. That's a perfect word. So,
Mm.
if you want a pool overlooking the ocean, well, then a pool overlooking the ocean, that home is going to be a luxury home to you.
Yeah.
If you want something on the side of a mountain, that's going to be a luxury home to you. So there is a
Mm.
dollar element to it. But I
Because
think
the
that's
best features have
because they
demand,
cost
and
money.
where there is
Exactly.
demand, there is cost. Yeah.
Yes, because there's a
Yeah.
quality element to it as well.
Yeah.
There's a custom
Yeah.
element to it. There's an exclusivity element to it. And so those things, just by very definition, do have dollar figures attached. But again,
Mm.
I don't think that that's the defining characteristic. And to your second question, who is qualified?
Mm.
Well, I would go back to the initial conversation that we had. You are not qualified to do anything unless you're qualified to do that thing. And the qualifications for what we're calling luxury real estate are an understanding of what those homes are, an understanding of how to sell this thing, what makes it okay, unique value proposition. Homes have
Yeah.
unique value propositions as well. Can you define the unique value
Mm.
proposition of that particular property? If you
Yeah.
can't do that, you are not qualified. It doesn't mean you can't become qualified. I'm
Yeah.
not qualified to operate on somebody's lungs. It doesn't mean I can't go and become it, but I'm not now. I know my limitations. I don't have that knowledge. And so, but you can become qualified. So it's not so much a, close the gate behind me, nobody else is able to come in sort of a thing. If you want to be an exceptional practitioner in this space, I will help you. I want to help
Yeah.
you. And so that's why we have conversations like this.
Do
And
you do
so,
you feel like there is in the luxury space
yeah.
any of that where the like closed door policy, like, oh no, you can't, I can't share my resources with you?
Sometimes I think that it might be, in my experience, it's a little bit overblown. I have actually found the luxury world to be the most collaborative of all,
Mm.
because there is so much differentiation that's needed, and so much, you really, I mean, if you're going to be unique anywhere, you have to be unique there. And so, because of that, particularly with people that are not in your market, directly competing with you, I can understand some close to the vest with somebody that's down the street. I get that, right? That's natural,
Yeah.
but it's a friendly competition. And in my experience, luxury agents are the first people to be willing to help you,
Mhm.
particularly people who are long standing in the business, because they understand that somebody probably did that for them.
Wow. And I know we talked about self-doubt a little bit, and to me it
Hmm.
sounds like, hey, you want to get rid of, you want to increase your confidence, you want to work on your self-doubt to be able to break into a market that you're not feeling so confident to break into, and you're thinking, why would those people want to do business with me, right? I don't
Hmm.
have the background, I don't have the relationship. To
Hmm.
me it sounds like get the knowledge you require, right? To me it sounds like go, put yourself in front of those people, right? And go get that experience by just doing it. But could you add a little bit more when it comes to handling that self doubt a lot of agents go through when breaking into or building a brand or building an impression on being able to service that type of clients?
You know, I wish that I could offer a silver bullet. The closest thing to a silver bullet that I can offer is that sometimes, truly, and it sounds oversimplified, but this is the fact, sometimes you just have to push through it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to feel that and just do it anyway, because that's going to be the differentiator. If you don't, you are going to litter the floors of history with all the people who also let fear stop them.
Hmm.
And the vast majority of people who felt that fear succumbed to it. That is your differentiator. So in
Wow.
order to be able to get through that first, and it's not that you're not going to feel it even on the other side, but it's almost never as bad as you think it's going to be. I mean, I think it was, I can't remember if it was Jamie Foxx or somebody said, an actor said, what I tell my children is open that door, because what's on the other side of fear is almost always nothing.
Hmm.
And that's really the thing too. It's like spiders are more afraid of you than you are of them. I mean, we build these things up in our heads and we create these
Yeah.
scenarios, and it's almost never anywhere near that bad. So you've
Yeah.
got to just do it. I mean, you have to just put yourself out there. That
Hmm.
is the step to take, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're asking about actionable steps, that's the step to take. And then also, as you said, getting in front of those people, join the Chamber of Commerce, be
Hmm.
able to speak the language of business, get in front of these business owners and people in your community, join, again, a philanthropic organization. You have to be in the room. If you want to have the conversation, you need to be present.
Wow. Wow. And what would you, I think, in my opinion, we're running out of time here almost. In my opinion, um probably this is one of those times right now we're going through, like we went through between 2001 until 2008, 9ish, right?
Mhm.
There was the 10-year period where the industry got washed, right? And there were actually lot more new agent historically that came into the industry during that period between 2001 and 2010. And I truly believe between 2021 until 2030 we are going through that period right now where a lot of, I guess, like older agents that hasn't been successful, hasn't built the brand, hasn't built the business, are going to be out of business. But at the same time we will have the next generation of agents come in, right?
Mhm.
Millennials and youngers, right? What would be your advice for them that may be feeling overwhelmed with all the shifts and changes and new
Yes.
things that are happening?
The first thing I would say is to speak to somebody who knows what they're talking about. And what I mean by that is there is so much noise, right? You talk about shifts and changes, and we are in a time of shifts and changes in this business, but they're not quite as extreme as most people seem to be saying that they are. In my opinion, I think that every one of them can be dealt with, and they will become the new normal if they haven't already. And so a lot of the fear that comes out of those things, again, is it lives up here. But in the
Yeah.
aggregate, if it's in the minds of 800, 900,000, a million, 1.2 million realtors, then it becomes a real fear, even though it's largely unfounded. And
Yeah.
so, first of all, I would say get your head on straight. And I mean that in a loving and kind way, but I mean, take a breath and just realize it is not the end of the world. And in fact, for many of us, it's the beginning of a new world, because of all those people that are feeling that fear. It's going to cripple them, and that's going to open the runway for your success. So that's
Wow.
the first thing I would say. And then the second thing that I would say is be visible. Again, we're talking about being present, being in the room. The room's not always a physical room, right? Video. I talk a lot about video. I mean, being present in front of people and being in their psyche and bringing them the message that they want to hear. That is one of the most powerful things you can do, no matter the level you're at. You could be at the absolute peak of your career, and that still has massive value. But if you're a new agent in particular, go and get into those luxury homes and understand those luxury communities, know where the amenities are. Are they behind gates? Know those things, know those markets, so that if somebody does sit next to you at the bar one night and you're talking to them and they ask you, hey, I've been thinking about buying something here.
Yeah.
You know the market, you can rattle it off. That's a huge part of the puzzle. And if
Yeah.
you don't have that, you don't have a business.
I love that. So this is the least knowledgeable you will ever be.
Mm-hmm.
This is the least known you will ever be, right? So go out there, make some mistakes. People won't
Yes.
remember, because this is the least known you will ever be, right? Like the more you get yourself out there, it's gonna actually become more important that you know what you're talking about.
That's a great point, actually. Now is the time to fail, because no one knows who you are yet.
I know, right?
If I
It will
fail,
become.
everybody knows it.
I know, right? So looking ahead, right? My last question to you is, where do you see your business going in the next few years, and how will you continue to innovate and grow in the luxury space?
Well, that's such a huge question, and it's a great question. And I'd say that about all of them, because I could talk ad nauseum about every one of these topics. But so for us, the quick and dirty version is this. I want to continue serving our clientele at the absolute highest level. That part's never going to go anywhere.
Mm,
But my ability to scale what we have created and the knowledge that I have built lives in the world of other agents. And
yeah.
I'm a natural teacher. It's how I'm wired. And so I can do more good at scale if I am teaching others. And so that's something that I am working actively on doing right now. I have a buyer advocacy program that we designed for our own team that is a total differentiator in the market. And maybe at a future time we can talk about that. But I designed a course around that I am now
Wow.
offering to other brokerages. And so those kinds of things, they say rising tides raise all ships. I believe that to my core, and I want to be part of the thing that makes that tide rise. So it's a relatively amorphous answer to your question, but whatever satisfies that is the answer to your question.
So what do you could you tell us a little bit more about, like, I didn't know about this. So about what you're offering?
Sure. Yeah. So I am just now, I might pull a Phil Stringer and just tell everybody I have a course when I don't yet, and just get ready for it. Right. I love that story, by the way. But, so we have a buyer advocacy program. It is, people have been talking a lot about, being able to define your value on the buy side the way
Mhm.
we historically always have on the list side, because now you have to do that. Right. Well, we've been a buyer agency state this entire time. We were one of the 17 states in South Carolina that is buyer agency state, and has been my entire career. So this is not new for us. So we had designed an end-to-end buyer process that I then sort of systematized and made, again,
Wow.
made more beautiful, more accessible, that I am now teaching to other agents and other brokerages how to handle a buyer start to finish in a very systemized way that makes their life beautifully simple as much as possible.
Wow, that's interesting. So definitely, so those of you who are tuning in or have tuned in, if you want to know more about that and that stands out to you, obviously she knows a lot more, right? Daniella, you talked about building a brand and video content, all the insights you gave. I was like, wow, like she knows so much. And you're selling real estate over there, right? Like it's like you're should be more like a marketing person than
I'm our
than
marketing
we all
person.
should be, right?
Yeah.
So definitely reach out to her. Daniella, thank you again for adding all this value to the community. Definitely looking forward to obviously connect with you at EXPCon, but
Yeah.
see how we can collaborate together in the future.
Yes, and for anybody watching, if you would like to reach out to me directly via social at Daniella Stonefield, you are more than welcome to do so. I would be very happy to speak with you.
Love it. And giving the call to action is very, very important, right? I get a lot of guests, most of the time they don't. And we don't understand the power of making an offer, right? You obviously you didn't make an offer. You just said, hey, if I can help you in any way, reach out to you. It will be my pleasure to reach out, right?
Yeah.
That is an offer that we, a lot of times in marketing, we don't want to be so salesy, right? And we don't want to make it seem like we're putting ourselves out there, and we're a little bit scared about that. So I think that would be another learning lesson that you can take. You want to break into a market, make offer to that market, right? Like, why
Yeah.
would someone want to work with you if you haven't explicitly ever told anyone that you would like to sell luxury real estate, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you again for joining in. Those of you who have joined in, those of you are probably going to join in later on when this is streamed on the podcast platforms. Thank you for listening in. And we covered some powerful insights on breaking into luxury real estate, building your unique value proposition, and adapting to a just do it mindset, right? To drive success. So if you're serious about taking your business to the next level, now is the time to act. So you can either send us an email on support@bossagents.co, or you can find me on social media platforms. We can set up a free strategy call if that's something you need, and look into your business, identify your gaps, and just show you what is working for agents in our academy and has worked for us. Thank you. Thank you for listening in.